Roll call, please.
Let me start the webinar.
Recording in progress.
6 p.m. Call the meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Student trustee Malik. Student trustee Migliaccio. Trustee Withrow. Trustee Napoli Abella Reese. Trustee Gonzalez Ewan. Trustee Johannes.
Here.
Trustee Delphine Polk.
Here.
Trustee Gonzalez Brito.
Here.
Trustee Quinlan.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we get approval of the agenda? Can I get a motion to approve?
Thank you, Board President. Before you approve the agenda tonight, I'd like to ask to add an item, item 1.5, before public communication to amend the agenda for a report out from prior closed session. So move approval for the amended change, please.
Can I get a motion to approve? Second.
So we have a motion to approve from Delphine Polk, a second from Trustee Johannes. Roll call, please.
Student trustee Malik.
Yes.
Student trustee Migliaccio. Okay, trustee Napoli Abella Reese. Trustee Gonzalez Ewan is not here. Trustee Johannes.
Yes.
Trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez Brito.
Yes.
Trustee Quinlan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 1.5, public communication on matters that are not on the agenda. Chancellor?
Thank you, Board President. Item 1.5 now is to report out from prior closed session, and I'll turn it over to our General Counsel.
This is a report out from the closed session of April 14th, 2026. On a motion by Trustee Gonzalez Ewan and a second by Trustee Napoli Abella Reese, the board voted 6-0 to approve a memorandum of understanding regarding sick leave reporting with the California State Teachers Retirement System. This motion was handled on a roll call vote, with the roll call being Trustee Withrow, yes, Trustee Gonzalez Ewan, yes, Trustee Delphine Polk, yes, Trustee Napoli Abella Reese, yes, Trustee Gonzalez Brito, yes, President Quinlan, yes, Trustee Johannes absent. And that's the conclusion of the report out.
Thank you.
Item 1.5, public communication on matters that are not on the agenda. Board President, there are no public comments tonight.
Thank you, Chancellor. Item 2.1, facilities master plan presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, trustees. Well, first of all, before we start, I want to just say how grateful we are to be here at the College of Alameda for our study session. So I want to thank and give a moment to President Dixon to be able to address everybody as a warm welcome, but want to thank the entire team at College of Alameda and our outstanding MCPR team for setting up everything, and the tech team here at College of Alameda for their support. So President Dixon.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, President Quinlan, members of the board, Chancellor Gilkerson, colleagues, and faculty and staff. Thank you so much for joining us this evening at College of Alameda. I would like to, on behalf of our faculty, staff, and students, give you a big Cougar welcome And just this evening, I'd like to uplift our foster youth. We are heading into Foster Care Awareness Month in May. And I think of our Next Up coordinators and our Next Up programs. I just want to thank them for all the work that they do and the resilience of our students year over year in choosing Peralta. So with that, Chancellor, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you again for joining us this evening.
Thank you again, President Dixon. And I'm going to be sending out to our district community an incredible podcast that President Dixon just did, being featured, talking about the incredible work happening here at College of Alameda, sharing a little bit about herself. She's got some good tips on restaurants too. So we'll definitely want to make sure that everybody checks out her incredible podcast that just dropped recently. So look out for a great listen. I think it's about 30 minutes to a podcast near you. So we're excited tonight, trustees, to have the Facilities Master Plan Board of Trustees study session. And first of all, I want to thank Amy Marshall, who is our Director of Capital Projects, for her incredible work in the role and helping shepherd tonight. But we have some amazing partners in our district. And so I want to introduce Alma Strategies, our team, managing principal and partner, Sean Blaylock, and then also Benjamin Rosso and Kamal Joel, who are here. I'm going to be presenting some of the initial work and sharing with the board what's next for our district in this really important part of our planning integration. So I'll turn it over to the Alma team. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, there we go. First slide. Hello. What an absolutely outstanding opportunity that you have tonight. We are going to be presenting to you a significant amount of information, but I want you to think about it in terms of opportunities and how this is an opportunity for you. My name is Sean Blaylock. I am the managing principal and partner of Alma Strategies. And this is Ben Rosso. He is the consultant and the program manager that we have working with Amy and so forth. And we have Kamal Joel, who is the research analyst. These two people are really the heavy lifters of the program and of the presentation we're going to give you tonight. Next slide. Oh. Okay. There we go. Alma Strategies has a lot of experience with facility master plans as well as master plans in general. We work with over 35 community college districts in the state and over 48 community colleges combined. These are an example of the districts that we are currently working with and have worked with and are working with in terms of the master plan and all that is there. So you can see that we do have this example of opportunities as well as a lot of experience with multiple colleges, multiple college districts, as well as single college districts. Next. Technological. There we go. Why are we here tonight? And one of the reasons why we're here tonight is to share with you the initial findings that we have that we've been working on across the district and across the colleges. And this is the what. What are the initial findings? We also want to review the data and what the data is telling us about the district's reality. This is the so what. What does it mean? And then finally, to discuss the strategic choices and opportunities that you have ahead. The next phase of planning and scenario development, this is the now what. What do we do with this information? And so therefore, we are engaged in you are engaged in an opportunity to look and redefine the community college of Peralta, the community college district of Peralta, and you have this ability to do this tonight. Next slide. What is an FMP? An FMP, or Facility Master Plan, is a guide. It's a guide for you to look at what it is that you are, your guide for your facility investment and what it is that you are going to be looking at in the future. It is also to align spaces with programs and services. Pardon? Okay. Is to align spaces with programs and services and to provide long-term sustainability. What we mean here by sustainability is not just for power and so forth, but also fiscal sustainability, program sustainability, and what are the options that you have ultimately to support student success. Why does it matter now? The district has aging facilities and rising costs. That is true. Your district footprint, and what I mean by this is your district's building footprint is too large. It does not align with your student population right now, your current modality and your instructional patterns. They're currently out of alignment. This misalignment has increased and created a strain on operations, instructional delivery, and student services. And this is your strategic moment for Peralta Community College District to realign these facilities with future demand and student success. Next slide. One of the things that we're going to do in looking at your facilities is look at it in relation to a total cost of ownership. We're going to be looking at what facilities do you have right now? What are the recurring costs and so forth? We're also going to be looking at what are your operations, your staffing levels, and what are the costs, your IPPs, initial project proposals, final project proposals for the state to get state money, as well as to look at where you are getting some funding specialties that we can look at. We're also going to be looking, we'll talk to you about this tonight, the program. What programs are you having? Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. I'm technologically disabled. Okay. What is your enrollment? What is your revenue from the state and so forth, as well as what are your decision informing your student projections, populations, and industry? We put this all together and we come up with what's called total cost of ownership so that then we can develop scenarios to what might be the best and present them to you as a board. Next. A facility master plan is moving from analysis. We don't want to get into analysis paralysis into action. We're going to be using three guiding principles. Function. What are the functions of your facilities? What are the program demands and the modalities that you're teaching? What is the form? What is your space is? How are you using your space? And then also the condition. What condition do you have? Oh, thank you. What condition does your facilities have, and what are the costs to modernize and to use deferred maintenance and so forth? Coming down to a program facility integration model. We're going to be using all of this as the guiding principles to making these decisions and giving you scenarios. We have taken your shared governance guidelines and decision-making model, and we have used it to define and help us produce a work plan. We've gone through the define and discover phase, and right now we're in the dream phase. We're going to be moving, we've done a lot of analysis. We're going to be moving and working with you and your staff and your faculty in the areas of focus groups with students looking at surveys and so forth. We're going to have town hall meetings in the month of May. And then we're also going to analyze and synthesize the stakeholder development to say what is actually your clientele, your constituents are saying. Then we're going to move into design and developing the goals and initiatives. Finally, we will go into the design and delivery. This is your model. We are taking your shared governance decision-making model and adapting it to us. Now we're going to be looking at what type of facilities you have and what is the facility conditions for that. For that, Ben has done a lot of work on this, and he's going to be presenting this. Ben?
Thank you very much, Sean. Good evening, and thank you so much for having us. The facility condition data shown here comes from assessments coordinated by the State Chancellor's Office, as well as the Division of the State Architect, and carried out by independent contractors. These contractors evaluate and physically inspect campus buildings and assess factors such as structural condition, infrastructure, and age. From that review, each facility receives a Facility Condition Index, or FCI. Let's take a look at the graph in the middle of the screen. As we look at the graph, we see that the lower percentages between 0 and 39%, shown here as the color green, indicate better condition or efficient. Higher percentages between 40 and 79%, shown as yellow, indicate greater deficiency or adequate. Facilities in the highest range, or 80% or higher, shown as the color red, are considered deficient. And at a certain point, the cost of bringing them up to code can make replacement a more practical option. Based on the assessment of this state-provided data, the FCI, we've come to find that 38 out of the 96 district-wide buildings are considered deficient. The facility condition data reinforces that the district cannot approach every building as though long-term reinvestment is equally viable. Berkeley City College is an outlier because of its newer facilities, but across much of the district, the condition burden is substantial. This is one reason the status quo is increasingly difficult to sustain. So what do we do with this deficient space? Deficient space mix is the strongest candidate for renovation, demolition, or replacement. But there's one important point I would make here about future replacements. For Peralta, we cannot assume a one-for-one rebuilding, but rather we can imagine and find an opportunity to see what future buildings, renovation projects can bring for Peralta. These buildings can be smaller, more efficient, and support multi-function and disciplinary uses. In the spirit of the transformation plan, this is where pruning for growth becomes conceptually useful. The point is not reduction for its own sake. The point is to make disciplined choices so scarce resources can be directed towards facilities that best support students and programs. Let's take a deeper look at each individual campus, and I'll walk you through the campus maps that we have created. We have overlaid the FCI data that I just described in the previous slide on top of each college's campus map. And as we walk through each campus map, I want you to imagine this opportunity about what right-sizing the footprint of the district looks like, and what future possibilities can look like as we discover which buildings are considered the most efficient and what the future for those could look like. As we can see here by Laney College, 10 out of the 33 buildings on campus are considered deficient. A majority of those buildings are located in the central part of campus, including buildings A through D. Moving on to Merritt College, we find a similar situation where a majority of the buildings that are considered deficient are located in the central part of the campus. We found that through the FCI data, this is 13 out of the 27 buildings that are considered deficient and in this condition. Right here at College of Alameda, we find that 11 out of the 27 buildings, including the very building we are in here tonight, is considered deficient and is a prime candidate for replacement, renovation, or repurposing. As I mentioned before, Berkeley City College is our outlier. It has two newer facilities that are considered highly efficient, and they are not candidates for replacement. Last but not least, we have the district office, where we can see that 4 out of the 7 buildings, including the main administrative center, are considered deficient. And again, this is an opportunity for the district. Though that the district has these deficiencies, it is an opportunity to imagine what could be replaced and what the future of these buildings can look like. I will now hand the mic back to Sean for further comment.
There are a lot of opportunities here, but we want to engage hopefully in a conversation. This is the first section. We'll go through 2 more. Do you as a board have any questions, observations, concerns that we might be able to address now or answer for you?
So trying to break it down in terms of buildings does not reflect the impact of those buildings on our student population. And I'm wondering if it would be possible to break these charts down in terms of deficient, adequate, and falling apart, whatever they are, in terms of the students that are using those, the number of students using those, so the actual impact of conditions on that are the conditions that are actually impacting our students in the greatest numbers, where
Yeah.
the greatest impact is.
Yes, we do have that information. We have not presented it right now. We do have another part of our firm is doing what we call a space utilization and a space optimization, meaning who are using your facilities, what programs are growing, which are not, and how does this impact your the individual students. We have that going right now. But when we're looking at a facility, and we can give that information to you through the chancellor and through Mr. Nelson. But yes, we do have that information and how it will impact. The next presentations that we have will address the students more directly. But yes, we do have that ability.
Just a question on deficient and what does it mean exactly when a building is deficient? What's the criteria? And then I was curious about the fields that are marked deficient, like the soccer field at Merritt, I think is red, or is it just red because that's the color of the field? Or-
I think it's the color of the track.
Okay, so the fields are not deficient.
No.
Okay. All right. So yeah, if you could just describe the criteria for what makes a building deficient.
Okay. There are 2 criteria or 2 organizations that measure the facility condition index. One is the state chancellor's office directly, and they send in engineers and architects, independent of everyone, and they literally walk through the building, look at all of the functions, the wiring, whether or not you have any asbestos or any conditions that require removal, ADA compliance, and so forth. Then what they will do is they will then look at what does that cost or what does it take to bring that building, what is the age, and what does it take to bring that building up to current code. That then they put on a ranking, which Ben has shown you as adequate, deficient, and efficient. So they are independent and evaluators that do that. And they come through the state. Every community college in the state gets that, or is done that every other year. The second is the state Department of State Architect. When a building is touched, meaning you're going to paint it, you're going to change a light bulb, you're going to do more flooring. That is when the Division of State Architects says, you have to bring this building up to local code. And that local code means if you have to, if replacing that, to bring it up to local code, that building is going to exceed 45 to 50% of replacement cost. Now, this is a little complicated, Then the State Department of Architects says you must replace or bring it up to code. And the State Department of State Chancellor's Office says we then need to replace that building. So there's two criteria. One is the State Division of Architects, and two is the State Chancellor's Office through the SCI. I know it's a little complicated. Did that answer your question?
Doesn't mean anything structural though necessarily.
Pardon?
Doesn't mean anything structural though.
Yes, it can.
It can.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Because one of the things that is the biggest issue of bringing buildings up to code is the requirement in the state seismic code. So yes, it does include seismic. Right now, if you don't touch a building, you don't have to bring it up to code. But if you touch the building and it exceeds more than 45% to 50% of the replacement costs, the State Department of Architects says you have to bring it up to code,
So
which means pretty much replacement. Yes.
yeah, trustees and everybody, I want to just remind everybody, we have nothing deficient or unsafe
Yeah.
right now on our buildings. This is a divisor for the way in which we score buildings and track them. I want to just also clarify that maintenance criteria is exempt up to a certain dollar amount. So depending on what you're doing, if it reaches a certain dollar amount, then it hits the thresholds that require certain level of review or things. So this is a facility index that's used across the state for all of our facilities. But I want to just underscore that the term deficient and stuff doesn't mean that we shouldn't be in this building right now. It's a decision-making tool that we use to determine the overall condition on the scoring criteria that would then allow us to consider what type of funding or what we can do to the building without making us do certain things.
Exactly. And what Chancellor Gilkerson, that is exactly true. Should the state put any more money into it, or should the district put any more money into it? It isn't a question of safety. The buildings are safe. But if you put money into it, does that mean to bring it up to code? But I really emphasize and thank you. All your buildings are safe.
Thank you, Chancellor, for that clarification, because I think that's a very important clarification. I have a question, and it's connected to what Trustee Brito had just said right now. And I don't need the specificities, maybe more generally. I just looked at our 2017 facilities master plan, and the district as well as Merritt, the percentages were on point. They were exactly the same. COA and Laney College, and I'm trying to think between 2017 and now, we haven't worked on a lot of the buildings, yet Laney in 2017 said 87% of the buildings were at that adequate or very bad level, whereas now we are at 30% and College of Alameda, 91% at a particular point in time and 41. So generally, without the specificities, what did we do something? Oh.
We did. So trustee, I'll use one example. We did work on the art building at Laney College, which is a certain amount of square footage that I think would add to the score. Remember, right now we're finally breaking ground on lots of projects. So that's going to help us with some of these things. But that was a large part of what we did that helped change that number from the 61% to the 80-something%. So that'd be an example at Laney that I'm aware of. So as we continue to do things and take buildings offline, and remember, taking a building offline is also this other thing. So if we leave a building vacant, which is to board president's question, what's the impact to students? So we have buildings at Merritt College, as an example, and even here at COA that nobody's using right now, but they're still sitting there. They still count on our index, right? And so sometimes just what we think about usage versus what the state sees and everything like that is some of these nuances of some of the particulars.
Yes. What she said. The other thing is that since 2017, not only have you done work and added remodeling and new facilities that will change your index, also the building code has done a major change actually this year and the year before last. And so that will move your facility condition index around, even though It may not necessarily mean that the building has changed or you touched it. It would hit because the building codes have changed dramatically over the last 2 years.
We also did the central utility plant at Laney College that just finished up as well. So that's another additional thing that's changed.
I want to circle back around to Trustee Gonzalez Brito's question. The way I heard your response was the state architect comes in, they do an assessment.
The state chancellor's office comes in and does an
Oh, the
assessment.
state chancellor's office comes in, they do an assessment, they give us a score. And then when we go to do renovations, we've got to bring it up to local code. What I'm not hearing in that is kind of the underlying criteria that makes an assessment. So I would imagine that for some buildings, it's X, and for some buildings, it's Y. But those might be completely different. Are we also then doing internal assessments? So we're taking what they look at.
Yes.
We're doing so that when we would go to look at a particular campus or a particular building, are the data available for us to look at to say, this is why this building is inadequate?
Yes. There is a state chancellor's office program that keeps track of all of the state facilities at every community colleges, both in terms of classroom, lecture, lab. Every single square foot is monitored and is accounted for. That's called your space inventory. Every single college building and facility undergoes this evaluation. It's called the facility condition index. And there's a criteria that they go through, engineering, structure, and so forth. All of that is housed or in what's called Fusion. It's a state-run guide for your space inventory, for your state money, for your state maintenance and operation money. It is a complete guide, and that's where this type of information is housed.
So if I were to, for example, go to Fusion and then look up this particular building, would it give me an assessment of what would it
Yes.
take to get this building up to speed? Like, why is this building inadequate?
It would give a number, but then you could go back into it and look at why that number was there. You could go back and look at what the actual engineer said about that building in Fusion. Yes.
Okay. So I have a second question, and Chancellor, this might be more for you. I'm not quite sure, but I think for any of us who are homeowners, we're doing maintenance if we can afford it every year. I know, like, I've got a home, and every year I'm spending literally thousands of dollars painting it and dealing with roofs and so forth. And I'm keeping my home up. And I remember when I became a trustee, I was shocked at the idea that, oh yeah, that building it's no longer functional. It's 50 years old. We're just going to tear it down. And the idea that you would just tear down a building after 50 years seemed crazy to me. Like, my house is over 100 years old, and I'm trying to make it so that it never gets torn down. It's always being maintained. And so what I'm trying to understand is, like, our funding model funds us, with the funding formula. And then every once in a while we get a little bit of maintenance money, but it's clearly not adequate.
Correct.
And I'm trying to understand, like, if half of our facilities are falling apart, I don't think it's just that we've messed up. I'm
No.
like, how do we get to a place where half of our facilities need to be torn down, basically?
Okay. First of all, I want to reiterate, all of your facilities are safe and all of your facilities are not falling down. Okay.
That's hyperbole. So thank
Okay.
you for that clarification. But
One of the the biggest difference is, should it be repaired or replaced? And we're not talking about state capital, or we're not talking about maintenance and operation monies, which are radically the districts don't get enough money for maintenance and operations. Okay. So go ahead. Okay. So what happens is they say, what, unlike your house, you don't have a State Department of Architects. If you touched your house and you had a third party say, if you touch your house and you're going to put in more money to replace that or to repair that house, that building, than it costs to tear it down and rebuild it, the state architect's going to say that here.
Well, it's like your building codes regulars. So I think Dr. Blaylock brings up a good point. And Trustee Gonzalez, UN, such a great question. So last year, you'll remember the board adopted a goal to learn about total cost of ownership. So we set the stage for our district community to really understand. And that's why I asked them to put that slide up at the front. So remember, these are the difficult decisions we're making. So we get money from the state, we get apportionment from the state. We choose what we're going to do with those dollars. And so that can go on the salary schedule, that can go to buy supplies, that can go to do student, right? And it can go to continue your maintenance operation things. And we have seen, as Trustee Napoli Bella Reese pointed out, you have your 2017 where conditions were very, very similar in a lot of ways. So we're really fortunate that the voters have voted to support our bond campaigns, but we also have had the great privilege of having the state bonds and us be eligible for matching dollars for projects that would help us do this. So that makes us eligible. But ultimately, the question really for the board and for us as leadership is, what will we choose to do? Where will we choose to put our regular dollars and how we want to do that in terms of doing these things if we didn't have state dollars to rely on or the good funds and support from our district community. And so these are the balancing acts that we're doing. And so a facilities master plan, which they're going to get into the next parts here very quickly, is that this really helps you and us make decisions and like sort of make sure that transparently people can see the things that we're trying to make decisions about with the limited dollars that we have. And you are correct that we get limited dollars from the state for what was called very deferred maintenance in a lot of ways, because really what they knew was that we weren't really doing it, right? Colleges, and we've been funded so poorly to be able to continue this. It's really now called scheduled maintenance, so we should have a schedule. And then I want to commend the board and remind you that last year when we made the change to our budget principle models and our reserve policy, we put in a place, right, so that we could actually begin to create a reserve fund for facilities related issues that come up. We're just starting out, right? You only did that last year, but we're trying to put good principles in place as we transform the district. So we're set up for success and at least being able to see and have funding irrespective of what it is. And this is why the plan helps.
And we're setting up a criteria with which you can make those decisions for. So let's move on, because I think it will answer some of those questions. So what are the facility condition index findings? We don't necessarily have to go through this. We've talked about this. Your footprint right now is too large for your enrollment. What that means is you have too many buildings, too much assignable square feet for your enrollment patterns. Also, as we were talking, the sustainability challenge, not just the care and feeding for that, but also programmatically. Your facility now as Dr. Gilkerson's talked about, you have to make strategic facility questions and financial questions as it relates. Now what? We are moving into future replacements, and we want to emphasize your future replacements, your future decisions that you make are going to result in facilities that are smaller, but more efficient and multi-used and align with your student population. So with that, we now have an external scan. This is, Kamal has worked very hard in this, and this is the areas that we go into. So Kamal.
Hello, everybody. We're going to be starting with service area enrollment. When you look to the right, we have service area enrollment by county. We can see that Alameda County is the largest contributor. However, the surrounding counties do have students coming in those, they just contribute far less. So when we take a look into Alameda County on the right, we can see that the city of Oakland is where most of the students are coming from. What this means is enrollment is highly localized. So we have regional population by race and ethnicity. We're looking into Alameda County. When we look at the y-axis, we have population size, and on the x-axis, we have age groups. This is all broken out by color, which represents a race or ethnicity. So when we take a look at this, we see age ranges 35 to 44 and 65 and up are where the population is concentrated. Along with that, it is highly diverse, and we see strong representations of Asian, white, and Latinx groups, which you can see in the blue, orange, and green. Okay, now we have regional educational attainment. This is also in Alameda County that we're looking at. On the x-axis, we have race and ethnicity. This is sorted by population size. And then these colors represent the educational attainment, starting with less than high school diploma in blue, all the way to bachelor's degree or higher in orange. So when we take a look at this, we see Asian and white populations have the highest amongst bachelor's degree attainment. And then with Latinx and Black and African American populations, high school attainment or some college is where they see higher concentration. This kind of highlights disparities in degree attainment. So regional competition and program overlap. On this table on the left, we can see that Los Medanos College is ranked #1 with a number of shared programs with the district. This is specifically CTE. And then we see Chabot and Las Visitas ranked #2. These are both located in Alameda County, so this indicates strong local competition. When we look at the table below, we could see organizations that are aligned, that have aligned trained areas with Peralta Community College District. And then we can see this is focused in things such as trades, IT, public sector. These often provide short-term training and often lead directly into job placement. Next slide. Lastly, we have regional labor market and living wage. So in this table, we're looking at the top 10 high demand occupations that don't require a bachelor's degree in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. This is ranked from average annual openings, and then we can see the median hourly earnings. This ranges between $17 to $25 an hour. And when we compare that to the East Bay living hourly wage, $17 to $25 an hour is actually below the single adult living wage. So what this means is highest demand roles tend to have the lowest wages.
So again, this is a significant amount of information, but one of the things that we see is that the majority of the the population is older. This we see all across the state, and your school age or your the age from elementary schools, high schools, as well as community colleges and colleges, the pie is getting smaller. So therefore, you have an opportunity to reach out to atypical students, so students who are above 35 and 40 and older, in order to provide those services to them as well. That is your largest population right now, but it is aging. You also have a living wage, but we would like your thoughts and your observations as it relates to the external environment. This is kind of like what we see across this across the Alameda and Contra Costa counties.
On the slide dealing with the program overlap, was that specifically just CTE programs? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Career technical education programs.
And this might be a kind of insignificant question. Could you just quickly expound on district facilities can better support a diverse and localized population? I mean, I understand that we have too many buildings, too much space for the footprint, but what does that mean? District facilities can better support a diverse and localized population specific to your external environment scan.
Okay. Right now, the majority of your students are coming from within a 10-mile radius, and that's Alameda County. In the next presentation that you see, which we will talk to you about, this creates an opportunity for the board to redefine your facilities and bring students onto campus and provide them ways to stay on campus and provide those types of programs that can keep them and increase their participation rate. We've seen a significant shift in that we're growing a shift toward pathways for your aging population, as well as a growing demand for workforce and CTE aligned programs. So that's where the major growth is, and that's what we are suggesting for your facilities.
So I'm a little shocked when you say that we have 9 competing programs with Los Medanos, because I don't know if you've ever tried to drive to Los Medanos, but it's not within driving distance if you're going to go to classes. It takes longer to get there than it does to have your class. And unless you're spending all day there, which most of our students aren't because they're working, we're not really competing with them. I don't think. I mean,
well, one of the things, though, that we want to look at, especially with CTE, is there's 2 portions in CTE as well as with your general education and your other students. You'll see in the next presentation, the vast majority of your enrollment is coming from online. So a college or a district could be a competitor when their program is online. For instance, even a CTE program, their instruction may be online, but their lab they may have to go to, or they may be able to pick up their lab in someplace else. But one of the things we need to look at is your competition is not just face-to-face. Your competition is now grown to become online. And that's, you'll see in the next section, that's where the vast majority of your enrollment and your wish is coming from.
Board President, one thing I would say, I appreciate that. I think because it's a contiguous district to us, while Los Medanos College is out sort of further in that area, I think one of the things, we know that students look at where they're going. There are students who are leaving us. And with a lot of our CE programs, oftentimes there are space limited and cap limited, right? And so these are decision points, though, that also are important to know. So if we know that there's a program and there is demand here and demand there, do we grow that facility in some way so that we don't have the cap issue? Or do we hire another potential faculty member in that area? So all of these data points, while they're not sitting next door to us, it is very localized in the Bay Area where we are highly competing with those given just the footprint of the number of colleges that are in our community.
but for the online, we're competing with people in Los Angeles and Sacramento and Washington and, all over the world.
Absolutely, sir. It's a really good point.
But one of the things, though, that, sorry.
I just want to add a positive, since we're on this topic, on a positive note, I just sat and checked the locations of I'm not from here, so I'm not sure where all the colleges are, so I had to check the locations of them compared to us. And I will say that, of course, Contra Costa, I knew that part was closest to us, but we do have the highest amount from Contra Costa and the lowest amount of overlapping programs. So that's a great thing. So at least we're not competing with the next door neighbors, if anything.
The other thing that I would like to point out, and could you go to the overlapping programs? No, not that one. That one. One of the things that we would also like to point out is not only your competition in relation to other colleges, but right down here is your competition as well as your opportunity to create working arrangements with third-party or non-college career technical education training. One of the real functions that you can see right here, these organizations, as well as their areas that they actually are training in relation to Peralta, is that why is it would someone go there versus somewhere else or versus Peralta? One of the things we looked at is speed. And this is where Dr. Gilkerson was talking about, is someone will spend $10, $12, $13, $15,000 to get trained because they can do it in 9 months. Okay? And so therefore, they can get a job in 9 months to a year. Whereas perhaps in Peralta, this is where we look at delivery and so forth, it takes much longer. So I would, yes, you are competing here. But more importantly, this gives you an opportunity here to create ongoing relationships with third parties and provide perhaps workshops and relationships in order to provide career technical education that can give you a living wage as it relates to these areas.
I would argue we already have those relationships.
Okay. Okay, move on. Okay. So as we've already discussed, the space alignment, your student shift, now as you have an opportunity to align instruction and support spaces for non-traditional students, and we talked about that. We also have an opportunity to align individual campuses to fulfill specialized programmatic roles. And this is one of the things that the facility master plan is going to do now versus the 2017 is your transformational plan. And we're aligning this with your transformational plan and looking at specialization within campuses for career technical education as well as other types of education. So again, this gives you an opportunity to align these campuses for specialized programmatic roles. Now, this is the third one. This is an interesting set of data. And I would ask you to, as you have been so wonderful paying attention, but a lot of this will answer some of the questions I think that you've asked in the past, just recently. Ben?
Thank you very much, Sean. And thank you. Now, on to the last what section in our data findings, the internal environmental scan. And here's the overview. The internal scan is a district-wide analysis of enrollment, student headcount, and full-time equivalent students, or FTES. It's also an analysis of instructional delivery and program activity, such as in-person versus online modality patterns, measured in weekly student contact hours, WISH. I'll be using that frequently, and I will be reiterating what WISH is as we move through these slides. The purpose of the internal scan is to help us understand how student demand, course-taking patterns, and space needs have changed over time. In the internal scan, we utilize metrics from fall 2019, fall 2024, and fall 2025. Now, why is that? We use fall 2019 as a pre-pandemic baseline, fall 2024 as the recovery point and emerging new baseline, and fall 25 as the most current pattern. This comparison is especially important for facilities planning because the district's physical footprint has largely stayed the same, while enrollment, participation, and instructional delivery has shifted. Now, why do we use weekly student contact hours in this analysis? WISH is especially useful because it helps drive the state funding formula, connects program demand to facility need, and serves as the standard planning metric across California community college districts. Now, let's move into the first level of analysis. We'll be looking at a district-wide level, enrollment headcount versus full-time equivalent students, FTES. At the district level, enrollment has stabilized at lower levels from fall 2019, but instructional capacity has not fully recovered. Let's take a look at the right-hand side of the screen at the table. Starting with the student headcount. This district fall 2025 duplicated student headcount is 2% below fall 2019. As we look at full-time equivalent students per headcount, better known as participation rates, we can see that the district has fallen from 0.28 to 0.25. In other words, it used to take, back in fall 2019, about 3 students to make one FTES. As of fall 2025, it takes about 4 students. On the right-hand side of the screen, as we look at the totals for FTES across the district, we can see that the district has fallen from fall 2019 by about 12% as of fall 2025. The important distinction is that headcount and FTES are no longer moving together the way they once did. The district is still serving students, but students are taking fewer units on average. That changes how instructional productivity is generated and changes how space should be planned and used. Now let's look at the district-wide instructional modality shifts. The district has experienced a structural shift in instructional delivery. This is indeed a structural shift, not a temporary disruption. As you can see based on the graph on the left-hand side, in-person instruction recovery has been slower. And let me walk you through this. Starting with on-campus lecture, highlighted here by the orange line, we can see that it has dipped significantly since fall 2025 as of fall. It has dipped significantly since fall 2019 by 57% as of fall 2025. Meanwhile, on-campus lab, highlighted by the yellow line here, has largely stabilized since fall 2019, but still remains 25% below fall 2019. However, with online modalities, highlighted here by the green line, we can see a significant shift and a huge increase in online instruction taking, where there's a 125% increase from fall 2019 to fall 25. On the right-hand side of the screen, if we total the weekly student contact hours across the entire district, we will see, though, that the district-wide wish is 13% below from fall 19 to fall 2025. The facility implications are straightforward. The district should not assume the same level or type of traditional classroom demand going forward. Now let's take a look at each college and compare them together based on some of the data that we just looked at the district-wide level. Here we'll start with participation rates. This slide shows that participation rates have stabilized at lower levels across all 4 colleges. In other words, students are taking fewer units on average than they were before the pandemic, and that pattern has held across the district. As we can see here, flanking on the left and right-hand sides, Laney and Berkeley City College have experienced the largest declines, while Merritt and Alameda have equally remained below their fall 2019 levels. For facilities planning, this matters because lower participation rates means less instructional activity generated per student. This suggests the district can reduce excess space and reinvest in higher impact environments, such as flex space for students and space that promotes hybrid and online modalities. Furthermore, this presents an opportunity to the district to build upon the strengths of each campus. Let's take Berkeley City College, for example. With its newer facilities, there can be a more direct focus to optimize high quality space and maximize utilization. Let's take here, for example, College of Alameda. College of Alameda could lean in on hybrid and flexible deliveries and look at redirecting scheduling and potentially position as a pilot campus for future models. Now let's move on to the next level of college comparison, full-time equivalent students. As we can see here, this slide shows that FTES has declined across all 4 colleges between fall 2019 and fall 2025, although at different rates. Starting at the top, we can see that Laney College experienced the greatest decline at 21%, followed by Merritt College at 12%, with College of Alameda and Berkeley City College declining less, but nonetheless still a part of that decline. The key finding here is that instructional activity has stabilized at lower levels across the district, but recovery pattern is not the same at every college. For facilities planning, that matters because lower FTES suggests a different level of instructional demand. And the district was planning for before the pandemic. Now, let me walk you through this slide. This is the college comparison for instructional modality shifts. And as we look at the numbers here, keep in mind the numbers are measured in weekly student contact hours, WISH. So this slide shows a clear and consistent modality shift across all 4 colleges. On-campus lecture and lab activity remain below fall 2019 levels, while online WISH has increased significantly everywhere. Now let's go left from right. Starting with Laney College. Laney College is still producing the district's most amount of weekly student contact hours, though it has declined in on-campus lecture and on-campus lab WISH. But the caveat, it has recovered that WISH through its online course takings. As we look at Merritt College, we can see a notable finding is that it experienced the greatest decrease across the district through its on-campus lecture WISH at 64%. College of Alameda. College of Alameda, if we look at the on-campus lab WISH, it actually recovered much more so than its surrounding colleges in the district, with only a decline of 11%. That's something to be proud of. Last but not least, we have Berkeley City College that has increased the most in its online takings. Between fall 2019 and fall 2025, it increased online WISH at 203%. That is incredibly significant. Overall, instructional delivery has changed structurally across the district, and that shift has direct implications on what kinds of space are needed going forward. There is a reduced demand for traditional classrooms and a need for flexible and hybrid capable space. This creates an opportunity to rethink how classroom space is needed and what it should look like in the future. Last but not least for this section of data findings, we have the college comparison of program demand shifts. This slide shows that program demand is not only declining in some traditional high volume programs, but also shifting towards different kinds of programs across colleges. Across the district, many of the largest declines since fall 2019 are in programs such as math, English for speakers of other languages, better known as ESOL, and biology. Meanwhile, growth is occurring in more workforce aligned, specialized, and emerging programs. Again, let's go top to bottom, starting at Laney College. Some of the most notable growth that we've seen are in unique programs that, again, are unique to each campus. But we'll see a little overlap as we go through it. With Laney College, we see growth in some CTE programs such as carpentry and culinary arts, as well as electrical and engineering technology. At Merritt College, we see growth in computer information science, child development, and landscape horticulture, as well as statistics, which that is a pattern you will see for the remaining colleges as I describe it. For College of Alameda, we see growth in business and automotive technology. And for Berkeley City College, we see growth in arts, multimedia, art, counseling, and business. Program demand is changing in ways that have direct implications for facilities because future spaces may not be so much more so about traditional classroom space. but rather there should be a focus and shift towards flexible, specialized, and multi-use environments that support where student demand is actually growing. I will now hand it back to Sean for commentary.
So this says that there has been a significant structural shift in instructional modality. I just also want to say, through our experience throughout the state of California, this is not unique. This is very typical of that. So what are your observations and questions if we could participate?
Yeah, thank you. On the program demand shifts, is that also through 2019 to 2025, that same time period?
Yes.
And so I'm just wondering about ESOL. Is that potentially part of kind of the political shift that has happened? And could we see a swing back?
I don't know. We would have to look at, we are going to be doing some student surveys, and we're going to be reaching out to them. This would be one area that would say, why is this the case? Why is ESOL not, is it due to you feel unsafe and so forth? But we will tease out that information as to the so what, or
Well, those students aren't here to survey. It's hard to.
Oh, but we can get them from 2019 and reach out to them.
I see. Okay.
I think you have a good inkling though, Board Vice President. I mean, I think that we are in a very localized community that has real demands, the cost of living in our area, the access to housing, we see our basic needs, things. We also see and heard what we said before. There are other providers of ESOL in our community that are not us. We work collaboratively with our adult education, but we also have many community-based organizations that are also providing that service. So what's the ease of access? How are we looking at these things as it relates to our overall transformation plan and making things easier for students to access the programs and things that they need? So I think that's an important point. And I just want to offer that the growing trend in statistics that you see really is pulling from what was traditionally our math program. So while you see a decline in math in the data that's here today, remember, until we got Common Core numbering, we didn't actually have statistics as a discipline. So that's pulled out from that. So you do see that shift a little bit. So I want to just offer some clarity on like, oh my gosh, does everybody want to be a statistician now? It is a little bit different. And so remember, curricular changes sometimes change the data a little bit, but it's an important point to make. And thank you, President Absada.
Okay. On slide 30 with the different, the on-campus and off-campus and online, specifically the declining numbers. I know you said it's a statewide, but can you tell me about where we rank in California? Because ours are 52%, 64. That's still significant.
It is significant. And to be just very honest with you, I can't give you specifics as to we will measure against what. The difficulty is that you have to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Sure. And so that's a really good question. We can research it from some of our other clients and get back to you about that.
Okay. And then just a clarifying question, the slide prior to 29, it says the percentages, just to know the calculations. This is by sheer numbers, but technically, according to the state, since the number of FTS, the percentage of STS is different, it's a higher percent if the state were to look at these numbers. We're 21% below fall of 2019 for the first one, right? But that's just doing the mathematics. But according to FTES by the state, it'd be maybe 25% below because we're counting 4 students instead of 3. Is that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I think your point is excellent point, Trustee Johannes. So we are funded as a district. So our full-time equivalent students is done by everybody. So when we always say, we don't want to be in competition with ourselves because, right, it all matters. So you're correct in terms of the overall district-wide.
Yes.
The numbers would be slightly higher as far as funding is concerned.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And then I want to clarify too, remember, we've had statewide shifts, right, in legislation. Remember AB 1705, right? All of these things that are pushing the way in which they're asking us to accelerate, which for good equity reasons, a lot of this has come out. So I don't want to also belittle the fact that we had students languishing in developmental English and math. there are work that's been done, right? We've had a lot of curricular changes that happened in math and in ESOL and in English that has shifted the numbers. So I think, without some context, it's important. And thank you, Vice Chancellor Vasconcellos.
So in math and English and ESOL, I would argue that probably 20% of our classes have disappeared because of the lower levels being no longer deemed necessary. I mean, I would argue with that. The other thing that I have, the argument that we're making around delivering education online, much of the population that we're really trying to impact and that needs our community colleges the most does not really have access to a lot of online classes. The technology, the high-speed computer, things like that do not allow them online access in many cases. And much like myself, if I go to an online class, about 15 minutes into it, I'm ready to throw my computer across the room. And I imagine many of our students are like that also. They do not learn well that way. And for us to make assumptions, we have to ask ourselves our questions. Who are we serving and what are they capable of and how do we best serve them? Not just that we're moving towards an online world.
And what's the best way to deliver the kind of acquisition of knowledge and what kind of communities you want it, right? So there's multiple questions that have really been addressed, and we're looking at sort of district-wide in terms of the transformation work and the analysis that's been done to really start to have those conversations and questions. And that's why you can see some of the build back of the online and the in-person, and making sure we have the facilities that will help us do that and attract people is a key point. And I see Trustee Delphine Polk.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to point out, thank you for this presentation. It's been really helpful. One thing I wanted to point out, looking across all 4 of our colleges, it looks like, Chancellor, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like a lot of the GE courses are declining, correct? So would that indicate potentially that students' demand is for workforce development? I would assume that would be the case. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think that is some of the just analysis that we're doing across the district is there is a more, and what Dr. Blaylock was saying, again, just the interest in getting to work, right? So because, and we've heard this from some of our students, right? It's so expensive. So they're taking one course, it's taking them 8 years, right, to graduate versus being able to sort of concentrate and do it all. And so these are some of the things that we're thinking about. So in many of our CE programs, students can take just the core courses and get hired right away, and they might never complete the actual degree, right? So they're not choosing to take the general ed portion of that degree program that we offer. And so we're seeing that in some of our data as well. And so again, as we think about how we best schedule, and the conversations we're having about is like, how can we think about 2 to 3 year schedules and guaranteeing what those classes will be like and when they'll be scheduled so people can work and also think about planning for their families and think more thoughtfully as we think also about the age range groups that are really seeking and need and have no higher education. We want to be thinking about those things too, but it's a really good analysis that you just did.
And what we're seeing across the state is just what Dr. Gilkerson is saying, is that students are coming in and wanting to get job growth, workforce development, and so forth. That's becoming a real priority. That does not mean that transfer to a 4-year school and so forth is not important as well. So you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but you do, when we do see growth, and this is across the state, we see the majority of the growth of any community college is in career technical education, especially that which can create an online can create a livable wage relatively quick. Speed is really important.
Okay. I have a number of thoughts here. I appreciated the external scan stuff and then the internal, and at some point, I think we're going to need to have that discussion of how these things overlap. One of the things that I think we need to look at in terms of the external scan that's not on your data so far, Chancellor Gilkerson has been, neck deep in, is the basic needs data, in particular around housing, but also transportation and food insecurity. And how do those impact how we think about how we use our facilities, just as an example, like housing insecurity, is that an opportunity for us to think about how we use our land? Transportation insecurity, well, maybe the points you were making about online education impact that in some important ways. So that's just one thought. A second external thing that I don't think we've really gotten our heads around is the impact of AI on the labor market and the labor market shifts. And the way that students and our population in general is accessing information. I think people used to come to college to access information. Now they're going to AI tools, which are actually often very useful. And so how we think about what we're doing and how that impacts our space needs, just we need to think about that. The pandemic really changed a lot. And I think one of the things that it changed is the way that people interact, not just with each other, but with education. And one of the impacts that I think a lot of us who are in the classroom are seeing is that the same way that workers just quit showing up, students just quit showing up. And if we talk to our colleagues who are in the classroom and we ask them to just have a discussion about, or what are their observations about workload expectations, et cetera, I think there's just been a dramatic decline in the expectations that students have about how much they're going to invest in their learning and then what their level of competency that they think they need in order to graduate. I was reading something the other day about an online educational institution that was offering a bachelor's degree in 9 months. Just think about what's happening in our classrooms and the dumbing down of the educational offerings and how that impacts our space needs. I'm not sure, but I think it's profound.
It is.
And I think that we need to be thinking about that. I'm looking forward to this sort of the impacts for the transformation task force work, et cetera. So, those are all the external things. So let me now just think a minute about the internal things. I appreciate the need to look at WISH, weekly student contact hours, but I don't think we can completely then separate that from the actual head count.
No, right.
And I'd like to see those data points actually on the chart at the same time, because the head count impacts our facilities use. And it's not necessarily obvious to me that if you have, let's say, a student who is going from 4 classes to 3 classes, but then you've got more students, it's not necessarily, I don't know exactly how that impacts things. One obvious way is that our student services are still in high demand, counseling, et cetera, but then the classroom space changes. So I think just tracking those across all of our slides is really, I think, going to be critical. I'd also then, when we look at the online education, I think we need to track not just online, but we need to track hybrid as a separate category, so that, like I've recently started teaching in high flex classrooms, which are really powerful. How my colleague Lewis is basically trashes online education all the time. But for you, and it's definitely true that it changes the quality, particularly the asynchronous classes. It really changes the quality. But I think there are ways of offering classes to students that are hybrid that we need to just be paying attention to really, really closely. So I think that's the main comments that I had. Thank you.
I don't know if there's anything that you said, sir, that I would disagree with.
Oh, yeah.
And you are correct. That's why we're taking your transformational plan, your facility plan, and that's why we're looking at how do we begin to create that. And what you're talking about is the now what? What do we do with this information now? And I'm agreeing with you. The thing that we begin to see also is not just hybrid or not just online. We also see a shift in people wanting, and faculty even, wanting to take meetings and so forth online. A case in point, and this is where we talk about the facilities, you'll have a student who will take an online class but still be at the college, or take an online class for Laney but then goes to a in-person class. And so one of the things right after that, so you're right, transportation, types of classes, what are they doing? We have faculty that will be in meetings, that I've been in meetings, not just here, all across the state, that will be sitting in their office 50 feet from the meeting. And they prefer it being online. So one of the things I'm agreeing with you, is you have a preference of instruction that has entered into, that COVID opened the door for that. And how does that address it? That's something that we begin to work with.
And Trustee, I think like part of what we're seeing is, so we're giving you the first blush tonight of data that's going to actually then come together and coalesce into the full facilities master plan. And there's a lot of engagement that's about to happen. You're getting the first look at some of the things that will start to spark conversations in the district community over the next, and so we're going to have them go. But I want to just remind us that equity and really serving the most diverse student population probably in the state, in our district, is a really key point in having these deep conversations with faculty and our classified professionals in the ways in which we serve students, what we're trying to create in terms of that, because there is an assault on higher education now, right? Which is the value of that, those kind of conversations, but we must not actually decouple this from the equity outcomes and the disproportionate impact we might see with particular groups. And so we need to go deeper. So this is first blush from our external things, but hopefully they will spark good conversations to say, what do we see in the gap between a particular group of students and another one that are online or they're in person, and how are they learning? And then how do we decide how we're going to schedule and communicate to students why we think it's important that we're offering it in the modality that we are, right? So I think the work that we're doing around analysis and packaging things, the conversation that's come out of the distance education task force with the transformation work, is really saying, how do we really think through where there is interest, and then how do we build the right program and offer it in the right way, and think about that level of engagement, and then how do we do these other things. So I think your comments, like Dr. Blaylock, they're really rich, and it will all start to come together here hopefully in the next iteration.
Absolutely. I understand this is an initial thing that's sparking a conversation. And I think the gist of what I'm asking for is that on the external scan data, we also include trends in labor market, impact on AI, basic needs. And then on our internal data, we're simultaneously tracking headcount and not solely tracking WISH.
Oh, I agree with you. We do track head count, FTES, and WISH.
So on slide 26, it has all three. So we are trying to show, because it is confusing to people. So we'll be a little bit more explicit. So appreciate the direction on what you'd like to see.
And then on there was one page, I think it was page 31, slide 31, where you've got the, program demand shifts. What I really would have loved to see is, maybe just breaking those out so that you could see what's the percentage in each of these programs to begin thinking that through. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of laid out. And I understand this is just the rough overall sketch, diving deeper into the data, then understanding, for example, if ESOL is going down, how much, over what period of time, et cetera. And I understand this is high level. So, you'll get there, and I'm sure a lot of your task force is.
And I appreciate that. So next slide. Next one. Okay. So What we really want to talk about here is the so what. We've already talked about existing space aligning with students. We've also talked about, and a couple of the administrators specifically, when you're looking at money and so forth, the reason why we use 2019 is that was pre-COVID, and your facilities are really pre-COVID facilities. What does the new baseline? So you're operating at a new baseline. So we'll be looking at 24, 25, and the future. And so this facility master plan is for the future, not necessarily for what is past, but your facilities currently are operating at 2019 levels. The other thing is there's, as we talked, increased demand for online, but this also provide what opportunities can you provide that? Now what? We heard you, we will begin to look at those other things, but we'll evaluate space based upon current demand. We're already doing that, as well as flexible hybrid space and plan around. The other thing that you need to think about is retention. You have enrollment, head count, that's important. But the flip side, the other side of that coin is you need to keep the students more engaged and taking more classes. So what does that mean? That's an opportunity that you need to be looking around. Well, how do we increase rotation or retention as well as participation, not just enrollment? Because enrollment is important, but so is retention as well as participation. Next. The overall findings. I think we have discussed this significantly tonight, which is great. But the now what is, we will be looking, you saw the first slide, one of the first slides, the total cost of ownership. Your facilities taken in a case, not just the buildings, but how are you using them? How are you, the care and feeding for them? What are the programs? What are sustainable? Sustainable being not just power, but sustainable being program development, program using, and so forth. What are the guiding principles? Remember, we're coming back to the guiding principles, form, function, and condition. So we'll be looking at all of your facilities in terms of form. What are they? You had pre-19 facilities, function. What are they doing? How are they teaching? Perhaps you need different types of space, more hybrid space, more utilization space, as well as condition. And we've talked about this a lot. And we will come down to bring that into recommendations and scenarios. Next. So, Trustee Gonzalez, UN? Right now we're here. And so what the board is seeing is, you're right, your first blush. We have a lot of that deep dive data, but you're getting what's called the first blush and the high level. We are also beginning in the next 2 weeks, we'll be meeting with we'll be doing focus groups where we'll be holding town hall and focus groups at every single campus. We'll be asking those same questions. We'll be bringing those same issues forward to your faculty, to the students, and to your staff. We'll be asking, what do you think? What would you do differently? And we'll do this through data as well, but we also need to understand this is data informed, not driven by data. So this is important. So that will happen in the next 2 weeks in May. We will also be doing some town hall meetings, which will be going outside of your campus, your campuses, and talking to the external groups. What do they need? What does the faculty, what does the business community think about how Peralta can better serve them, and so forth. And then we'll take all this information and begin to go into the next phase, where we'll take these insights, we'll begin to draft, we'll begin to have themes and goals and initiatives, and using the total cost of ownership, we'll begin to run scenarios. What type of scenarios could you begin to do? And what options do you have? And we'll do them across those 4 areas. Then we'll come back to you with the facilities stakeholder review and looking for in December where you would have a final product. It will take many different forms. There will be a digital form, there will be a tab form, there will be a written form, so that it can be a living document, not just I'll say, a document that goes ka-thunk, so to speak. And from that, we'll make recommendations and scenarios as to what does the future of Alameda, or excuse me, the future, let's look at Alameda, the future of Peralta Community College District might want to look like. You have a wonderful opportunity here. I know the data says, you know, you might look at it negatively, but I would say you have this wonderful opportunity as well. Next. So as we've talked about, this is our next step. We'll proceed with these. We'll return with more refined options and scenarios, and then we'll give you a potential action plan for consideration. I want to end with this. Yes, you had changes, significant changes, but you have 4 campuses, and you have a wonderful opportunity here that this moment is now. And it provides seriously a unique opportunity in which the data and the demand align, delivering a path for the future. You have an opportunity to create new and unique environments. What kind of student are you serving? What's your faculty? And the opportunity to build foundations for long-term sustainability, not just energy, but future student success as well as sustainability. And an opportunity to align facilities with today's needs and tomorrow's needs, not with the past needs, because there will be a future. So you have a wonderful opportunity for that. So thank you. We are here for other questions and options, but that ends our discussion.
Paulina?
Yeah, thank you for this. It's been really informative. The most important thing the most exciting thing, I should say, is all important, that you said to me that I heard was the dream part in terms of the engagement that you're going to do, whether students or faculty, staff, and also in the community. And so I heard these town halls, and that's really important. And you mentioned business. I wonder who else you're engaging in these town halls out in the community, what other constituents you'll be talking to and getting input from.
We are working with Dr. Gilkerson, her staff, as well as what do we see as potential. We've had experiences, which ones we should look at externally, and we'll bring those recommendations to that. But the specifics is we'll be developing those within the next week or so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been good to hear that tonight in terms of, you know, who you'll be engaging in those conversations. So we can hear that and then maybe provide some input into those. So perhaps the chancellor can send those to us. I think some of those are, you know, you mentioned business. I think some of those are even the partners you laid out, the trades that you laid out, the building trades and other partners that you laid out in one of your slides here. But I think, and there's nonprofits that you can talk to, but I think also just interested in, you know, there's organized folks, but I'm also just interested in community voices, you know, in terms of people who are, you know, maybe active in their churches, or that just whose kids might come here someday, or who's older adults who might be interested in coming to the colleges. And so I'm just wondering how we're engaging and who we're engaging in these conversations to help us inform what we're going to do.
And if you have some suggestions and so forth, please talk with Dr. Gilkerson and so forth. We would be more than happy to reach out to those people as well.
I'll say thank you for sure. Thank you for the presentation. It's always good to think this through at the different stages. So this was good. My question actually is for you, Chancellor. How have the conversations, or how has the reorganization oriented these conversations differently? If they have, and I don't know, but did it or has it? And how are you, I'll leave it at that. Have they yet kind of oriented the questions or the conversations about the FMP differently? Because we are going through these changes, right? And we don't know yet exactly what that's going to look like in the implementation and execution. But have there been spaces and areas where the questions are a bit different, considering our planning?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And I think really just the design of the work plan, using what we've developed through our governance process is a huge part of centering, one, the way we're going to engage in the FMP process so that we're reinforcing structurally like what we have adopted as district-wide as values for the way we go through inquiry. And I think that's an important point, right? So this isn't Alma Strategies coming in and like doing something. It is sort of, again, and it's not data, it's like data informed, right? So how do we have our external partners help us with this data? Then how do we go back? And I do want to underscore Dr. Blaylock said about if you have recommendations as, again, representatives from the different regions that are a part of our district of groups that we should be outreaching to, that's the next work that Director Marshall will be working on with Alma Strategies to determine those folks. But I think this is the biggest part is that I don't know that it's, we've been in this discovery and data stage so that we can begin to do those conversations with the community. So we haven't gotten there yet. So hopefully when we get back in December and we're giving a presentation on the full FMP, I'll have a better response for you about the ways that it's helping. But I do want the board to see that for me, part of it is, it feels like, man, this is a lot to be doing all at once, right? We have a parcel tax on the June election. We're doing transformation work or making decisions about things, and we're doing an FMP, and we're doing these things. But all of this is really necessary, like foundational stuff that will help us sort of move our district forward and make some of these critical decisions at the inflection points that we need to, as we sort of make sure that we're here stable and strong for our community and our students.
Okay, I believe I have kind of a similar question. Not really. I have two questions, which may not be able to be answered today, but that means I'll probably ask again the next time around. So the first one, regarding the buildings that are deficient, right, in the red. You said most likely would have to be demolished, and then possibly you build another building in its place, but smaller, multi-use and of the sort. The case is we will still have the land. So have there been any conversations as far as what that, so I'm not sure if that deals with the reunification or what have you, but any conversations around that?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Trustee Johanna, such a great one. So number one, we've been engaging, and I know in January I updated the board, we've been engaging in sort of just a land survey of what the district actually owns, making sure we understand what our footprint is. So we've been going through a pretty large strategy. We finished Laney College, we're doing the other colleges, we've done the district service center to get the actual to the point of like brass markers in the ground to know what we own and what's ours and how we can best use our land and see our land as an asset. And so some of the pieces that we're going to be doing, so again, for instance, here on this campus, College of Alameda, there are empty buildings right now. So the question is, what is the academic programming or student services that we need, and how do we best want the instructional space and the college to feel and do things? So they'll be using elements of all of these things to make some decisions about, do we actually demolish a building and take it down? And a lot of things we haven't done in the district is we've said we want to demolish things and then we've never demolished them, right? So we're living and the footprint is still costing us money and those particular things. So we're hoping that we're really going to use this as more of a data informed strategy to help us have the conversations we want. And then marked with that will be this larger conversation about what's the best way to utilize the assets that we have in this district for long-term financial stability and best serving the community and the needs and the educational priorities. And so I think there's a really incredible synergy with all three parts, but the land survey itself is happening separate from the facilities master plan process. So our goal and my goal will be to bring back to you so we can have those kind of discussions that you're talking about.
Yeah, thank you. And then the second, which this one I'll just ask. Once you get started, you're not going to know, you have a final plan and you have an outcome that you're desiring, but you're unsure how well you're doing. Along the way, do you already have an idea of what would be the metrics that to give you an idea as far as if you're moving in a positive direction or if you need to recalibrate and step back when you do implement the plan?
Yes, we have various metrics and formats that we will then go through to say, do they, in essence, check the box? and go through the various ones, and then we will come up. We have the opportunity in the program where we can run various scenarios at various campuses to say, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this, you can do that. And it will come to you as a board, but more importantly, using the shared governance and listening to your constituents, we are going to go out and listen to them and say, what are your thoughts? What are your desires? We have a metric that says the buildings, the size should be this, okay? We do have a metric, it should be no more than this. But we don't have, we want to listen to you as what should go into that. We do know the metric is you will replace buildings, but they will be smaller and they will be more efficient and more highly utilized. And we want to listen to the faculty first. We've spent the last 6 months gathering all of this information, this data, so that we could talk to them with informed and knowledge, but we need to listen to them as first. But yes, we do have a metric. Yes, we have as you have seen, function, form, and condition. We will bring those scenarios to you because that's really the decision of your administration, your faculty, your students, the shared governance, and you as a board.
So I want to just remind the board too and our community that the facilities master plan is a living document, right? So things change, they're happening. It's sort of like, and as you implement one thing, something may change, right? One day we thought we should have 20 science buildings everywhere. And then we realized like maybe that doesn't make sense based on conditions or things that have happened. So the idea here is that we will use it less as a tome, as he said, right? Like, and really try to create a document and data that's more usable so that when we're coming to you with bond spending plans or the decision to go or how we'll use the reserve dollars or what we'll maintain versus not, and making some decisions about the spaces that will occupy and the cost for the district, that's the way we want to use the FMP as a decision-making tool in our tool belt of all of the other things. So it's one piece of like multiple data points that you should be asking me and us to bring to you as we adopt the new plan.
Exactly. And we'll be, one of the things that Dr. Gilkerson has asked us to do, and we've done it with other clients as well, is to make it a living document. As things change, as things alter, you can put this into this program and the scenarios, and you can come out with what should we do, what shouldn't we do, what are the options. It's not really, we want you to make informed decisions. That's our goal. And those decisions are ultimately yours and your administration and your faculty. So we want to give you all of that information that is data informed so that you can be aware of the decisions and the implications of those decisions.
And just say thank you really quickly. And also, this was very clear, very clearly given to us. You guys speak like instructors. Thank you. It's very easy to understand. So I really appreciate it, really.
Just lastly, on the town hall meetings, when you said the focus groups are happening the next couple of weeks, the town hall meetings are happening when?
The week of May 11th and the next week, May 11th and the next week after that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, at least we should definitely invite our CTE partners and I'll maybe send some other ideas. If there's dates already, then.
I hear you. Our first priority right now is because we want to be sure to get your students, faculty, and staff involved before they go on vacation and before the summer break.
So the town hall meetings are also here. They're internal.
As well.
Oh, I was under the impression those were external, but those are also internal.
Correct.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They'll both internal and external town hall.
This time, they're
In this period of time, we'll be doing, so in this period of time, so over the next months, so we may be doing community town halls in June or in other areas. I've not seen a list or any dates, so I just want to offer, again, Director Marshall will be working with the Alma team to plan out when those things will be happening on the campuses at the district service center. And then they're also planning external community areas. Those aren't going to happen in 2 weeks. So we'll have a better sense of that. So please do send recommendations you have for that, and we'll be planning those out.
I just want to reiterate some gratitude for the very digestible information in the presentation today. So thank you. I'm curious, for the deficient buildings, which can either be renovated, replaced, or demolished, there's a lot of utilities within them or appliances, like we have tables, we have chairs. I'm aware that there are vacant spaces that we can move students and programs into, but would these like tables and chairs and whatnot, will they also be moved and kind of crowded into those buildings, or would they be part of the demolition? I'm just a bit curious on that part.
So it really depends, right? So whatever we do when we decide that we're going to do a new building or we're going to build something or move something, oftentimes what happens is then there's like programming that happens afterwards. So you can divine that you have a plan and you're going to do X. We're going to execute a new building, or we're going to move people out of a building, and then we're going to move people to somewhere else. So what we're always doing is we have support that helps us. So we have an architect often. We have like people listening to the constituents that are going to use the space to say, what's the best use of that? And so we may find, wow, these tables and chairs are totally usable again, and we would put them there, or they're not going to work for the instructional modality or what is needed. And so we may surplus those, or they may have lived past their life. So each area, and the thing we do inventory on equipment too. So we track everything. I mean, I'm not saying that we track it all that well, but we track everything. And so we're supposed to be on cycles for replacement of these things. And that's kind of been one of the Achilles heels for the district over the last many decades, right? Which is why we're sitting here with a facilities index and a large portion of our district community being in that red yellow zone, right? We're kind of orange, let's just say. I don't know if that should be our new colors, but yeah, orange is the new, anyway. Okay. So I think each thing happens. So there's not a universal brush is what I'd say, student trustee Malik. Like I'd say that each one is looked at like independently. But our greatest thing is these are public assets. These are public things. We want to use it to the best ability and make sure that we're using it in spaces. And I'll tell you, when I was the president at Laney College, sometimes I find surplus great things in the warehouse and nobody was using it. And then that became furniture in the student center. So we are really trying to be looking at the assets we have and how they can best be used across the district.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think the main concern there was, does it impact the quality of life of the students who are moved into this new building? Will they have to see a bunch of crowded, appliances there, or is there storage rooms to store them away? And one change is already big enough. Does that also?
Great point. And yes, we want to make sure that that students are in, and faculty and classified professionals and our administrators are in the most optimal spaces, right, to live, learn, and work. And I feel like most of us live here. Well, I'll speak for myself. I live at the district office. Okay.
So Chancellor, one question. The master plan we're on right now was finished probably 2017. So it's 9 years old. And I think based on some of our discussions, if 2 years ago we could have changed some of the things in that and applied for state money under different things, but often you said that those items have already been funded by the state, and so we couldn't correct those. Is there some way we can get, if we're looking at 9 and 10 year periods, the one thing we know, the world 9 years from now isn't going to be the world we have today. And is there some way we can work on getting some flexibility out of the state on this type of planning and financing so that we have flexibility and building for what we really need as opposed to what we need now, like building in 2035 what we think we need now?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think that's the advocacy, at the state as we're working with them, as we're thinking about sort of what does the landscape look like for another state bond? How do we articulate broadly? And I think that is what the chancellor's office is trying to do. That's why we have a statewide facility index, why we have fusion databases so that they can tell our story about our facilities and what's happening. And I think the conversation around flexibility is something that I think trustees can help support us in conversations with the league. And as we talk and work with the state, we've done a lot of changes to legislation just around student housing with the Division of State Architect, right? So there is possibilities to make some changes as relates to that. I will just, for clarification, make sure that we know. So our last facilities master plan, the update was in 2017. I remember because I think I wrote something to the front of the Laney College one back in 2017. But really, the last comprehensive facilities master plan we had was in 2008. So it's a very old document. It was rolled into something in 2013 and then rolled into 2017 for various reasons. And so what we really are trying to do, like I said, is not to do what people have done with it before, which is check a box and use it in that way, but make it really usable so it can be a decision-making point for the leadership in the district, for you all, as we're making decisions when we're going forward. So this fundamentally, hopefully, will be a very different tool and usage than what we've had previously. And to your point, things do change. And so that's why I want to say this is not a funded plan. This is, right, a living document that we use as touch points to make sort of decisions, but it shouldn't mean that we say like, oh my gosh, that means I'm going to get X building or we're going to get a new X, Y, or Z, because things may change, funding availability. And then also what happens is the way the state funds it is it's all scored. So you're applying, the state is scoring our projects. So, you know, it depends on who's there scoring the things of whether or not we get it or not. And oftentimes that comes in years later than what we've already done. So the system isn't as nimble as I'd love for it to be, but let us at least set the standard for nimbleness, I don't know, and stretching in the way we're approaching this new piece.
So I'm thinking that the master plan we're talking about probably is a sort of a 10-year vision. But of course, you know, we plan to be here for hundreds of years. And so
let's double down on that.
So I think one of the things that you talked about in your presentations was the need to build in flexibility. And I think maybe that's our opportunity here. Particularly with the speed of technological change. Maybe these facilities stayed kind of static for 50 years because the technology didn't move that much. The pedagogy was basically stand, lecture. Maybe then we moved to collaborative learning and we needed flexible desks rather than lecture spaces or something like that. But the technology is changing so fast right now, and then the labor market and so forth. So I think that flexibility is going to be really critical here. I really like the idea of, President Quinlan talked about mapping the programs with the deficient spaces and the good spaces. Like, where do we have these needs, and then how do we plan for those? And I think mapping those is going to be really critical. But I also really like the idea that maybe we could take some of these buildings offline, demolish them or whatever it is, and then just reduce the overhead cost of maintaining the entire thing. I'll just throw out, I think, the Board of Trustees under the prior chancellor unanimously voted to prioritize housing. And I know that we're under such a crunch right now, and there's no way that we have the capacity in this moment to do that. But as we think about where we're going, I'm just, it's like, if we don't plan for it, we'll never do it. And it's so obvious that we need it in this community. So I want us to really be figuring out, how do we plan that out? Even if it's not like, we're not doing it next year or the next year, but in X amount of time, this is sort of the long-term master plan vision of what we need for our community, and particularly what we need for our students, but also for our faculty who are coming into this region, and there's no way they can afford to buy a house on the salaries that we can afford to pay. So, down at Foothill De Anza, we now have student housing, we now have faculty housing. It's just a start. It's really just a start. It's totally inadequate to the demand. But I think we need to just be building that in. The last thing that I want to just say is this timeline for focus groups just looks impossible, crazy, too tight. We're trying to do all these other things, and then graduation and wrapping up. And Chancellor, I so appreciated your weekly communication, just talking about like, yep, everybody's stressed. we're seeing it all come out. Let's all take a breath. This is so normal. And now we're going to add on, oh, and by the way, we're going to do this major planning thing for the next 10 years. So, you really better, save your seat here because otherwise you'll miss the boat. So I think that, we're just trying to do so many things. I'm so grateful for your ability to juggle. And I don't know how we collectively will do this, but as we do focus groups, I really hope that we will pay particular attention to the student services side of this and to the basic needs side of this. The bringing in students to talk about their experiences and needs in those areas. The CTE side, it's just so critical. I remember when I first came on the board, Lewis was just, bending my ear all the time about the state of the machine technology program. And I'm sure, anyway, so, and then the last thing I'll say is, when we looked at that external scan and we look at the demographics and you see all these white people with educations, they think they're all secure right now. But they're all going to be losing their jobs in the next 10 years. Not all of them, but AI is just impacting us in ways that I don't think we understand right now. But I think that that's then the opportunity for us. That we've got this big changing labor market, and I think we're the go-to. Those people aren't going back to 4-year and university and so forth. They're going to come to us, but I don't know how. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Alma Strategy. Thank you for the presentation tonight.
We ready to adjourn the meeting?
I think we are. How are you feeling? Okay. Meeting adjourned. Oh, people started clapping. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause for the presentation. Thank you so much. Meeting adjourned at 7:56. Thank you.